Yes, we are. We're here again with our friend Avi Lipkin. Thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be back.
Avi, there's a lot going on in the world and has been ever since October 7th. It's sort of been this trigger point where people are like, is this the end? Is prophecy accelerating? And supernaturally, yes, God has preserved his people, Israel. All these nations surrounding to attack her, Hezbollah down, Syria crippled. Now Iran is in the news because Israel has attacked Iran, has been taking out their nuclear installations. Iran is a key player in the War of Gog and Magog, spoken about in Ezekiel 38 and 39. I also believe that Russia is involved. Turkey is a major player. What do you see with this conclusion? With Iran crippled, is there still this war on the horizon?
I think that the problem of Iran
Mm-hmm.
is going to be terminated very soon.
Yeah.
I think Iran will return to the family of the nations. The Iranian people are good people, and because of 50 years of Ayatollah Khomeini and Khamenei, all that, you cannot erase 3,500 years of friendship between the Iranian people and the Jews and
Wow.
Israel. I think that Cyrus is described in the Bible as the Messiah.
Mashiach, yes, he
He's the
was.
Mashiach because he helped the Jews to go home and build the temple.
Yes.
I've been in Iran. I love the Iranians. In Israel, we have many, many Iranian Jews. I love them all very much. So I think that this is another uh, uh, breakthrough for the human race.
Mm.
That Iran's nuclear program is going to be decapitated.
Mm.
I also think if President Trump is saying we'll still give him another chance, negotiations, he knows it's not going to happen. So the next stage will be taking out the oil facilities, even though he doesn't want to take out the oil facilities.
Mm.
When you take out the oil facilities, there will be no water in Iran. There will be no gasoline in Iran,
Mm.
no electricity in Iran. And the people finally are going to rise up and say enough is enough. And many Iranians are very close to the broadcasts of the Israelis because they know that we're telling the truth,
Yeah.
and they know that we love the Iranians. So I think what we're going to see here, if you're thinking about President Trump having his face on Mount Rushmore, I think President Trump should have better than that. He should have a whole mountain to himself, because we're going to neutralize the evil of the Iranian regime and turn Iran into a very, very pro-Western country again, as it was under the Shah.
Mm.
I know many people say, well, he was a dictator and he was bad in many ways.
Yeah.
But I think at this stage, we're going to see Iran going into a modern era.
Mm.
I don't know what kind of system they will have. I think it'll be constitutional monarchy
Oh,
if the
okay.
son of the Shah goes back to
Yeah.
Iran. Uh, so this is like, a check, praise God, Iran is returning to the nations. Um, but to say something which will be a very strange thing I'm going to say,
Mm.
Turkey
Mm-hmm.
doesn't like Iran because
Mm.
the Turks are Sunni and the Iranians are Shia.
Mm-hmm.
So the Turks actually are happy with the downfall of the Ayatollah regime because the Ayatollah, they hate the Sunnis and the Sunnis hate the Shiites. And there are many, many, ISIS, they were saying, we hate you Shia more than we hate the Jews.
Wow.
That's pretty bad. So now that Bashar al-Assad fled to Russia to get asylum, now we see the Turks coming in through the back door with their ISIS people, with Giuliani. I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean the mayor of New York.
Yeah. The current president of Syria. Yes.
Ahmed Ashara, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a civil war going on in Syria. It's not over.
Mm-hmm.
And as I have to tell you it'll give you a hint as to where we're going. You heard of Jethro. Now,
Yes.
that's the Bible.
Yeah. Moses'
The
father.
Druze are the children of Jethro.
Yes.
It's a nation, and it is a brother or sister nation to the Jewish people. We never really had a problem with the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, like with the Christians, Jews have had some problems. It's a family feud. So we have that with the Jews also. But the Jews primarily were divided up into Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And wherever the Jews live, they are in the armies of those countries, and they're fiercely loyal to their countries. This is the Jews' way. So, of course, the Israeli Jews are fantastic.
Yeah.
They're officers in our army. They're heroes. I would say they're the most Zionist soldiers we have, the Druze. Syria, also the coalition in Syria was Christian, Shiite, and Druze against the Sunnis.
Mm-hmm.
And the civil war in Syria was horrible. And, 10 million Syrians had to flee. 500,000 Syrians were killed. I mean, we're talking about the Sunnis.
Wow.
And so now the Sunnis have come back, but it's not over. The Shia and the Druze and the Christians are fighting them still. So Julani, Ahmed Ashara, he's trying to have relations with Israel, but on the condition that Israel withdraw from Syria
Yeah.
and leave the Druze and the Christians exposed to extermination, which is not going to happen. So Israel's borders have expanded to the east and also to the north, towards Damascus.
Yeah.
There's even a neighborhood outside of Damascus called Germana. It's half Christian, half Druze. What do they have in common? They're being killed by the Sunnis. Now, regarding Turkey, what I wanted to say, and President Erdogan of Turkey, he said this. He said, "You Jews prayed about Jerusalem for 2,000 years. You wanted to go back. You wanted to go back. Well, we Turks ruled from the Atlantic all the way to China. There are Turkic people in China, in the West. It's Xinjiang province.
Yeah.
And we've been dreaming about that for 1,000 years.
Wow.
So we're going to go back. We're going to go back to Morocco, North Africa, Southern Europe. So for them, Iran being defeated, the fanatic Shiite regime, that's good news for the Turks, because that means they're next with the caliphate.
Wow.
So I believe that what's going to happen is there will be a major war between Israel and Turkey. And my 9th book is called, it's not finished yet. I'm in the middle of it now. I mean, I came here all of a sudden, really spontaneously. I came to the States. But there's a battle which nobody has ever heard of. Very important sea battle called Lepanto. Lepanto is in the Mediterranean Sea, and it is a Greek area. And the Turkish Navy, it was in April 1571. The Catholic navies of Spain, Venice, and Genoa completely sank the whole Turkish fleet. But the Turks were on the ascendancy in Europe. Because they were up to Vienna, up to Moscow, up to Warsaw.
Wow.
My great-great-grandfather, whoever, going back to the 1600s, built the walls of Warsaw for the King of Poland. He was knighted by the King of Poland for building the walls of Warsaw, was given the name Kamień. Kamień in Slavic means stone. But in 1571, the Catholics defeated the Turks. Now, why don't you know about this in American schools? What did you hear about? The Battle of the Spanish Armada. Because the Protestants whipped the Catholics in 1588. But this battle was a victory of the Catholics over the Muslims in 1571. So my 9th book is called Lepanto II. And that's how the Turkish fleet will all be sunk by the Israeli fleet. But that's going to spark an Armageddon war, because you have 200 million Turkic Muslims who are part of the Soviet Union. And now there's Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, good people, but they're Turks. And they are entitled to Turkish citizenship. Why doesn't Turkey become a member of the European Union? Because the moment the Turks come in, it's 100 million Turks, 200 million Turkic Muslims of the former, that's 300 million, plus the 50 million who are already in Europe, that's 350 million. And the Christians, I mean, Europeans are not Christians anymore. They're just not Muslims. The non-Muslim population is 300 million, and the Muslim population will be 350 million. And Europe becomes a Muslim continent.
Wow.
That's why the European Christians don't want the Turks in. But the Turks, they want to go back from Morocco to China, from the Balkans all the way down to Mecca, to have their caliphate. So I'm watching all this, but if the Israelis sink the whole Turkish fleet, it's just the beginning of a major war. And so my book is going to describe the Turkish history, why the Turks think so much about 1,000 years of history going back to the Ottoman Empire.
Wow. That's a big deal because that is you see those parallels in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and even the description of them being, these territories. Gog is pulled with a hook in his jaw down to go Israel. All these Turkish Muslims that you said are still around in the stands, like you mentioned, they're in Europe, they're everywhere. There's going to be a reason for them all to unite together, and it's not an
Right,
accident
right.
that then Iran is part of it, Persia is part of it, Put, Kush, all these areas where they used to hold dominion.
It's not Moscow.
So you don't believe
Moscow
it's Russia?
is Russian Orthodox.
Uh-huh.
And I have to tell you something. There are a lot of bad things about Russia and the Russians, but they are not anti Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, Putin is very pro Israel, he's very pro Jewish. There are many people in the Russian church who are very pro Israel. And I don't really hear about anti Semitism in Russia.
Mm.
And not only that, Putin pays the salaries of the rabbis in Israel and the Jewish community. So Putin is not anti-Jewish or anti-Israeli. I don't think at this stage. I think Putin and Russia. I'm looking beyond the Ukraine war.
Yes.
They have a problem with Islam. 17% of Russia today is Muslim,
Yes.
and they're Turkic. The problem is the ethnicity of the Turks. And I don't know if we have time, but I was in a interview in Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
I was on Radio Moscow, and I spoke in Russian. I studied Russian.
Uh-huh.
I mean, my Russian's horrible, but I sat down for 3 hours, 4 hours, with pen and paper, and I wrote down all the questions and answers in Russian with the help of my interviewers.
Yeah.
And I said to my interviewer, Oleg Gripkov, I said to him, I said, Russia should be working with America, Europe, and the Jews against Islam. And he said, this is 1994. He said, well, but we're still communists. We still believe in the solidarity of all the nations. So, we're not against the Muslims. I said, that's ridiculous. I said to him in the interview, I said, that's ridiculous. You Russian Christians have been fighting the Turks for 1,000 years.
Mm.
Again, when the Turkish
Yeah.
Empire started, the Turks were marauding into Warsaw, which is where my family was, marauding into Moscow, marauding into Kiev, and to Vienna. And the Catholics sank their navy in the Lepanto. So I look at the whole picture here. Um, I don't know what Russia's role will be, but the 200 million Turkics
Yeah.
that broke away from the Soviet Union, Kazakhstan,
Yeah.
Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, they will all join the army of
Yes.
Turkey against Israel. That's the Armageddon,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Okay. Well, so here's interesting. Obviously, Russia is really weakened by their war with Ukraine,
That's ridiculous. Yes.
um, and they've lost tons of troops. They've lost all this money.
A million.
A million.
A million troops already.
So would that not be enough to cripple them so that the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, can push north and take over more of that territory like they did again? Because you
Yes.
said they went all the way, from Morocco to China. That to me, because of the territories I read in scripture, it being that part of that northern area of Russia above Turkey, that may just be Turkey again.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
You don't think it would go that far?
I don't think they'll go that far. I will add also another thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians are very nationalist people, very stubborn people.
Mm-hmm.
They're very proud of their church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I said on that interview, and I know they taped it and they have it somewhere in their files,
Mm-hmm.
like this crazy Avi Lipkin saying that Russia should march with America, Europe, and Israel to defeat the Muslims. But I think that the Russians will play some role.
Mm-hmm.
What bothers me about Russia is they lack the Magna Carta,
Yeah.
1215. The Magna Carta was the beginning of democracy.
Yep.
It wasn't democracy, but it was like the first seed, which eventually developed with the Renaissance and with the Enlightenment and all different things that happened after, and the American immigration. 1648, there were Jews living in New York City. It was New Amsterdam at the time.
Mm.
There were Jews in Savannah. There were Jews in Charleston. There were Jews in Providence, Rhode Island. This is in the 1600s. America always blessed its Jews.
Yes.
So I think that the Russians have never had that. There is no tradition of democracy in Russia. But I think if the Turks will raise their hand up against Russia, I think Russia has that backbone of nationalism And even Putin said what made Russia great was its Christianity, which is of course Russian Orthodox
Yeah.
variety going back to Cyril and Methodius.
Yeah.
I mean, Americans don't even know the church was started in Russia in 995, but we're talking over 1,100 years.
Wow.
Um, I don't write off the Russian people.
Mm-hmm.
I know that parts of my family would be very upset with me because my father's side was from the Ukraine, which was Russia
Mm-hmm.
at some time.
Yeah.
My mother's family was from Warsaw, Poland, which was Russia at some time.
Yeah.
Um, I know all these nations, and I love all these nations, but I love America the most
Mm.
because it's white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. There is a tradition of democracy, which what made America great.
That's incredible. Sorry, I get a little choked up. I'm thinking about all the history. I actually do. The concept that what has blessed our country and placed us where we're at was our commitment to God is just an incredible thing to think about and to hear. And today, in a time period where we are so quickly attempting to abandon that as a country, when we are attempting to convince as many as possible that we did not have that background and rewrite history, it's a terrifying time to be in, but it's not one without hope. And the only way that we have that hope is for standing up for the truth. And that's what we're hearing in all these stories and everything that Avi's saying right now is that the only thing that you can really do to guarantee that evil's going to win is to do nothing. To close your door, to sit on your hands. I remember being in Germany and interviewing people who lived in the homes that were in front of the streets when the March of Death took place, coming out of Dachau. And here, 60 some odd years later, I was interviewing these people and they began to weep. 60 years later, these German people saying that I didn't have the courage to go outside and to protect those Jews that were being marched to death, even though the war had already been announced over. And I've lived in shame ever since. We might not even get the opportunity to live in shame at this point in history if we do nothing. Because not only your freedom, but your life will be taken away. Enemy is ramping up so much evil right now at unparalleled speeds today. We have to stand for truth. We have to unite behind the Jewish people, behind Israel. And we have to stand for the voice that put us here to begin with, and that is the Father. And it's paramount.
Thank you for joining us again, Avi. Your insights are amazing, and I believe it's going to give people a lot to think about.
Amen. I've been with Zola's ministry for 30 years. So maybe I'm saying something correct.
Well, this is what I was thinking about. You know, in the '60s, they had the bat phone. It was red. We need the
Avi phone.
The Avi phone, so that whenever something happens,
Avi,
you
what's
can just
going
read what's happening right now. That's all that's in the news. Okay, good.
Yeah, just stay away from the Israeli beepers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.